In my career, I've looked at over 100,000 resumes, and let me tell you, I've come to some pretty startling conclusions about the state of your resume. So hopefully this video will shed some light from a recruiting perspective about how your resume is perceived and give you some epiphanies that you can use going forward to maybe change your approach. But before we get into that, if you're interested in learning how to reclaim control and really start to take ownership in your career, your job search, how you write resumes, how you approach interviewing, make sure you sign up for my free newsletter. And in it, I share concise, actionable tips that will allow you to start approaching your career with more authority and conviction so that you can land your next job more quickly. Keep in mind, it's absolutely free. I will leave a link below. Hope to see you there. So in my career, I've been a career coach, a recruiter, a hiring manager, and then of course, I have also been on the other side of the table as being a job seeker, and I know what works because in each one of them, it's the same consistent thing. First major conclusion that I've come to, and this one is going to be an uncomfortable truth for a lot of people, is that customization is absolutely required if you want to have a reasonable chance at landing a job quickly. Now, you can brute force your way through thousands of applications all you want. In fact, that's what most people end up doing anyway. But the reality is that a vast majority of those applications just simply aren't a good fit for the roles that they're applying to. And if you check out my last video, this one will make a little bit more sense, but we receive hundreds, if not thousands of applications for every single role, especially if it's a high quality employer. I'm thinking those remote jobs, the jobs that pay well, brand name employers, etc. We get a ton of applications. And a vast majority of those applications are simply completely unaligned, or they'll have some of the criteria, very little bit of it, but their resume will read so disjointed and it won't be clear that they're a good fit for the job. And when you have that many, it's a buyer's market in that regard. The employer is purchasing the talent for these roles. They can afford to be selective about it. So your resume has to be airtight. And if you're somebody that's a pretty good fit for the job, but you're also trying to be a pretty good fit for this job, plus you're also trying to be a pretty good fit for that job, and also this job and over this job, the chances of you being a great fit for the job that you're actually applying to is pretty slim. And there are other people out there that are going to show as a better fit for the job. And if you have to keep in mind, even if you are a reasonably good fit for that job and you send over a fairly generic resume, there's going to be 20, 30, 40, 100 other people that are in the same boat as you that are a pretty good fit for the job that have also applied for it. Now you're playing a numbers game. Now you're hoping to get noticed, and it's really a losing proposition. Applying for jobs, physically sending in an inbound application, is the single hardest and slowest method to get hired out there. So as much as I know that a lot of people don't want to hear that, if you want a reasonable shot at getting a callback by a recruiter for a job that you're highly qualified for, you have to make sure that your resume is clearly showing it. And unfortunately, you're going to have to start customizing your resume more than you are today, because let's face it, most of you are not customizing your resume. But the good news is that even though it's a pain in the butt to customize every single resume that you send in, there are some tips and tricks that you can leverage to help you write a resume much quicker. For me, it takes me about 3 to 5 minutes to customize a resume that I'll be sending in, because I've honed in my resume so tightly and I have some systems that I leverage. I do teach those in Resume Rocketfuel in case you're interested in learning more about that. I'll leave a link in the description below. There's also some options to customize your resume more quickly leveraging AI tools like Teal, but keep in mind they're not perfect, and you only get out of it what you put into it. So if you enter in a bunch of crap, your resume stinks to begin with, it's just going to spit you out more customized crap. So you really want to know what you're doing if you want to leverage tools like AI, because it could actually hurt you if you're not careful. But the point of this all is that no hack, no shortcut, no AI system, no white hat or black hat trick or something you got up your sleeve to try to game the system is going to cover for or make up for a resume that just lacks the credential, that lacks the organization, and lacks the message that it's supposed to convey. Because at the end of the day, a recruiter in 99.9% of the cases is going to be reading your resume and then making a decision, do they want to reject you or not? Unless you fall under one of those buckets, you live in another country and you can't pass the base level. I'm talking the very base level parameters. But in general, almost everybody is getting physically viewed and then being either rejected or moved on to the next round. And listen, I know that people think recruiters are stupid, but they're not. And they know how to spot all the little hacks that you put in, including that white space at the bottom with all the keywords in white font, thinking that nobody's going to notice it and that you're going to trick the system, because the reality is that your resume is not going to back it up. So we always spot those tricks anyway, and when we see them, it just makes us think that you're trying to hide something else. The next epiphany that I have is that templates, almost in all cases, are complete garbage. I have looked through so many different template sites, especially the paid ones where they make you pay for a template to download. And in I probably 95% of them, I would say, are not ATS compliant on some level. They are convoluted. They will slow down the recruiter from trying to find what it is that they're looking for. They're basically just hurting your chances. Yes, they may look nice. Yes, there may be some pretty graphics and it might be eye-catching in that regard. Unless you're somebody of a graphic design or some creative field or background that you need to pitch creativity as part of your application, vast majority of people don't need that stuff, and we should be focused on getting our resume seen and getting the right stuff seen at the right times. And usually those templates are actually hurting your chances. So I would recommend not using any fancy templates, especially stuff that has columns, graphs. I've kind of talked through all of this stuff before. If you're going to use a template, I would recommend just keep it as simple as possible. You can even use a Microsoft Word. You go into their templates in there. I've seen plenty of them. Those are actually, there's more of them that are decent than on some of these template sites that make you pay for them. And I guess as another plug, I do include an ATS-friendly template inside of the Resume Rocketfuel course. The next epiphany that I had is that most people's resumes are way too long. In fact, chances are your resume is too long as it is. Your bullet points are too long. You've got way too much fluff on your resume. You're adding in too many keywords that are not really directly relevant to what we're looking for. You're guessing at what it is that the recruiter is looking for. You probably have 3+ pages. It's just making it harder for me, the recruiter, to find what it is that I'm looking for quickly. You have to keep in mind, when we're looking at 1,000+ applications per role, can afford to be very selective, and we have to move very quickly to meet our objectives. And if you find that you're getting skipped by for jobs that you really do qualify for, it is most likely because you're not clearly conveying your experience in an effective manner, or it's too long and convoluted and it's getting hidden and buried amongst all the other clutter in your resume. The next epiphany that I've had is that you should stop taking advice, resume advice specifically, but recruiting advice in general, from people who have never hired before. I'm talking about recruiters who work directly for companies who are responsible for talent acquisition and have direct responsibility for screening applications, or I'm talking about hiring managers who actively look at resumes and then make hiring decisions and produce job offers for these candidates. There's so much bad advice going around and it's hurting people's chances. And in fact, I see some of this conflict even in my comments. People will leave these things saying, well, wait a minute, I thought it was this thing and now you're telling me it's this thing, and I just don't know where to go with this. Everybody has a different opinion. And I'll say, and the easiest way to cut through the chatter is just to stop listening to people who have never hired before, because no matter how much your uncle or your friend or the coworker who is well-intentioned is trying to give you this feedback, or even there's a lot of career coaches out there, honestly, who have been giving this career advice and have never even been in hiring on any level at any point in their career at all. And at best, their advice is generic, and at worst, it's detrimental to a person's job search. So as much as you want to take advice from all of these different people who might be well-intentioned, it's probably not in your best interest, because all it's making you do is overthink your resume, and as a broader stroke, your job search in general, it's slowing you down and it's probably costing you jobs. And taking that a step further, professional resume writers aren't worth the cost. And listen, this is coming from a professional resume writer myself. I've actually determined that resume writing for somebody else, outsourcing your resume, is not in your best interest. On one hand, I'm on this channel telling you should reclaim control in your career by taking ownership of it, and resumes is one of the core pillars in that. And on the other hand, I'm also offering a service to take away your power and do all the work for you. And the reality is that not only is it detrimental to your job search process by having a professional resume writer doing it, I'll explain that in just a second, but it's also attracting the wrong kind of clientele. I am catered toward the person who wants to take ownership back, not the person that wants to complain, not the person that wants to blame everybody else, not the person that wants to outsource their work to somebody else and kind of say, I don't want to take ownership in it. My practice is about giving people authority back in their career and helping them reclaim control to act like the CEO of their careers. So I made an executive decision to stop offering resume writing as a service to be more in alignment with my mission. The reason why professional resume writers are not worth the money that you spend on them is that they're going to produce, I hope, a good starting point document, but that resume can only possibly be customized in theory to one specific job at the time it was created. So the next job that comes up, which might be slightly different than the job that you originally got the resume written for, is going to show a different thing. So now suddenly, if your resume was 100% effective, it's now only 80% effective and maybe 60% effective for this role, maybe only 20% effective for that role. In some roles, it's not effective at all. The idea is as you learn to write your resume yourself, you can customize it so that you're as high a percentage fit for all the jobs that you apply to, which is going to improve your chances of getting hired. Most people cannot afford to hire resume writers to write every single customized resume for every resume submission. This is especially important for those alpha jobs that you get really excited for. I firmly believe that writing your own resume is a core career skill that everybody should learn, because it will cost you thousands of dollars in missed opportunity. More importantly, you'll also miss out on hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost income because you don't know how to write the resume the right way. So I implore you, if you don't know how to write a resume, that's a skill that I would absolutely focus on. It will pay direct dividends in your job search and your career going forward. And not to mention, I can't tell you how many massive critical mistakes I have had to clean up from professional resumes over the course of my practice, talking to coaching clients and all that kind of stuff. They'll say, I just don't know. I got my resume written professionally. I just don't know why it's not producing any results. And they'll send it over to me and I'll sit there and like within seconds be like, well, it's because of this is wrong. This is wrong. This is holding you back. It's like, I just, and they sit there usually going and kind of like in horror going, I can't believe I spent all this money and there's all these issues. And it's, again, it's like, if you don't know what you're looking at and you don't know what you're doing, if you've never hired somebody a day in your life, it's going to be really hard for you to write a resume that is truly effective for what a hiring manager and a recruiter are thinking and how they operate. And a lot of the resume writers that I'm seeing are people who have never hired a person a day in their life. So buyer beware. I know resume writers who might be watching this are probably pissed off at me right now, but you know, it is what it is. This is a skill that everybody should learn. And then kind of just bringing it all full circle, out of all of these resumes that I have seen, out of all these hundreds of thousands at this point, the one thing that is probably the most overarching epiphany that I have had, and it's probably one of the reasons why I even started this channel to begin with, is that a vast majority, and I'm talking probably 95+% of all of these resumes have either moderate errors or critical errors. In other words, most of these resumes are crappy. And I can't tell you how many people in one breath will say, well, my resume is not crappy. It has to be some other reason. The recruiter doesn't know what they're doing and all this stuff. And then they'll show their resume and then it'll be like, actually, yeah, yours is crappy too, buddy. People don't want to face the fact that the resume, even though they may have loved it in the past, it's no longer effective and it is actually holding them back. And while there's people who refuse to admit that their resume might stink, there's also people who refuse to admit that they need to customize and do all these extra steps that can really help improve their chances. The good news here is that we can use their laziness to our advantage, because so few of these resumes are actually high quality. If you have a good background for the jobs that you're applying to and you take this next little steps, again, this does not have to be a very painful process. My customizing of resumes only takes me 3 to 5 minutes to do. I've created some systems that help me do it very, very quickly. But I can stand out from the competition so much easier because I can use their laziness or their stubbornness against them and to my advantage. So keep that in mind. It's all about the strategy when you're in a job search. Let's use the strategy and let's use any advantage that we can to set ourselves apart so we can get that job the most quickly. That's exactly why I'm here. If you're somebody that's been following along this video, you're not quite sure what's the matter with your job search, but you know something's off, it's actually something that I specialize in. I've got a website called alifeafterlayoff.com, and it's loaded with tips and tricks, all from an insider, a recruiting professional's perspective. So I peel back the curtain, I show you from a recruiting professional's perspective what exactly hiring managers are looking for, so you can demystify the process so that there's no more guessing, there's no more conflicting information. I like to believe that I'm the authority in this space. Some people probably beg to differ, but nonetheless, I am sharing my best and deepest and most intimate knowledge in the form of some training courses. And I already talked about Resume Rocketfuel. But once you get into the interview process and you make it your way through the different rounds, if you need help there and you're kind of bouncing out at different parts of that process, That's where the Ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp comes in. It starts at job search and goes all the way to job offer and all the individual steps in between, from the different rounds of interviewing and how to get noticed, how to market yourself effectively to get to the end, get to the offer, and then we teach you how to make sure that you don't leave another dime on the table. So I highly encourage you to check that out if you think that you're struggling. And I also offer some limited private one-on-one coaching. If you do need more individualized help, you can reach me through my website for that. Anyway, hopefully this was helpful to somebody out there. Appreciate you watching. Happy resume writing, and we'll see you on the next one.